nurse here, and she triggers a real big trauma in me. When I was 17, I went to the first eating disorder clinic. And at that time, they didn't know yet about my intestine problems being medical. I didn't even know myself. I mean, I have been sick since I was 6 years old, but I didn't know that the damage was lasting, and that a big part of my physical problems were just really medically. And at that time, everybody thought, okay, she has an eating disorder, she just has anorexia and has to recover, and she has to be force-fed, etc. And at that time, it was allowed in eating disorder clinics to force-feed people very quickly. And what they did, they just shut you down into a room, you had to eat something, and otherwise they would just, well, get it in you one way or the other. And that was really a trauma for me. And there is somebody here who triggers that in the way she talks to me and approaches me, and that is not her mistake. Neither is it mine, but it does make that I feel very unsafe and scared whenever I see her. And she is actually somebody who is really also very, very rigid in treating me in a way that makes it even worse. So what happened was, she said, you need to do exactly what I say. This is time to eat. These are the amounts. I'm going to sit next to you. I'm going to control you, and just do what I say and eat it. And that was making me so stressed out, because the other nurses aren't doing that at all, because I love to eat. You know, I'm always happy when I can eat again. And of course, my intestines hurt and my stomach protests sometimes, etc. Or sometimes quite often, but I still love to eat. So you don't have to force me, or just let me be at peace. And I'm not a slow eater. You don't have to talk every bit in me or something, you know. Just give me a plate of food and I eat it, and I'm happy when I can enjoy it. So that works the best for me. And the other nurses notice that, and they treat me quite, how do you say that? At least in a way that is normal. I mean, they see me enjoying my food and not moaning and just eating it within the time. By far, I'm always much quicker, because you get a half an hour for a meal. I mean, goodness, I don't need half an hour to eat a meal. I'm finished in 10 minutes or in 15 minutes. I know, you know, I eat just normal tempo. But it triggered something in me, and I just couldn't eat. And I was really angry at myself, because I wanted to eat, but I just couldn't. So I asked, is there another nurse who can sit with me, because they need to sit next to me? But she said, well, no, I'm the one standing for you today, so nobody else is going to sit here. And I said, but I really can't eat. It's not you.
Condition called Ehlers-Danlos syndrome that is a connective tissue disorder, and it wreaks havoc in every area of the body. I've had a particularly hard and extreme case of it, or just more on the severe side of this, you know, very wide spectrum, and it means that my body is shutting down. My GI tract has pretty much stopped working. I have a permanent feeding tube that was placed, and I get formula through there. I'm able to eat a little bit, but I've had a very hard time tolerating food and formula. My lungs kind of stopped working, not completely, but they've gotten a lot worse, and I never had lung issues before. So now I'm on supplemental oxygen, and a lot is happening to my body, and my heart is struggling. My body's just really having a hard time, and I've made the decision to stop pursuing any medical care or treatment, or keep using the devices that keep me alive. I'm not doing it yet, because obviously I have this oxygen here, but that's the goal, and that will be happening in the next couple of months. So at this point, I wanted to make this video because I have shared this news on social media. I shared with friends and family first, and then shared on social media. And I'm very grateful. I've gotten a tremendous amount of support and outreach. I struggle with the people who I've reached out to for support over the years that have never made the time, that now suddenly are really interested in kind of knowing everything that's going on. It's like that saying, something along the lines, I'm going to totally get it wrong, I'm sure, but you don't get to see me at my best if you're not there for my worst. And not that dying is the best, obviously, but it's just the idea that it's like you don't get to have very intimate details of what's going on when you haven't been involved in my life. I don't, there's been drama with my ex, and ultimately, I just, the way people have handled this, the number of people who have made this all about them is really shocking. I'm not, like, anytime I've been around somebody who's dying, I know this happened last year. I was extremely close and really hospice. I mean, I was there, and she wanted to know attention from it, and that I didn't want to get well because it was serving me to stay sick. They thought I was still sick because I got a lot of attention from it, and that I didn't want to get well because it was serving me to stay sick. They thought I was still sick because I got a lot of attention from it, and that I didn't want to get well because it was serving me to stay sick. They thought I was still sick because I got a lot of attention from it, and that I didn't want to get well because it was serving me to stay sick. They thought I was still sick because I got a lot of attention from it, and that I didn't want to get well because it was serving me to stay sick. They thought I was still sick because I got a lot of attention from it, and that I didn't want to.
by the doctors, and their doctors, and being the person that I was, who really thrived off of the approval of authority figures and really respected things like academics. It was like, they went to school for 8 years, they know what they're talking about. But I just found it so incompatible with where I was. I was sitting there wondering, how can I stop making myself make up these symptoms? Like, why can't I stop doing that? I was sitting there wondering, how can I stop making myself make up these symptoms? Like, why can't I stop doing that? I was sitting there wondering, how can I stop making myself make up these symptoms? Like, why can't I stop doing that? I was sitting there wondering, how can I stop making myself make up these symptoms? Like, why can't I stop doing that? I was sitting there wondering, how can I stop making myself make up these symptoms? Like, why can't I stop doing that? I was sitting there wondering, how can I stop making myself make up these symptoms? Like, why can't I stop doing that? I was sitting there wondering, how can I stop making myself make up these symptoms? Like, why can't I stop doing that? I was sitting there wondering, how can I stop making myself make up these symptoms? Like, why can't I stop doing that? I was sitting there wondering, how can I stop making myself make up these symptoms? Like, why can't I stop doing that? I was sitting there wondering, how can I stop making myself make up these symptoms? Like, why can't I stop doing that? I was sitting there wondering, how can I stop making myself make up these symptoms? Like, why can't I stop doing that? I was sitting there wondering, how can I stop making myself make up these symptoms? Like, why can't I stop doing that? I was sitting there wondering, how can I stop making myself make up these symptoms? Like, why can't I stop doing that?
first thing that we noticed was my loose joints. I have Ehlers-Danlos, which goes along with Mido often. Ehlers-Danlos is a connective tissue joint disorder. It affects my neurological autonomic system and makes it hard for me to maintain regular blood pressure, breathing, heart rate, and it can cause me to have seizures. I didn't really start having symptoms until I was 14, and that's when I lost the ability to eat completely. I lost the ability to eat for about a good year, and I was not just tube fed, but I was IV fed for 15 months. Nothing went into my system. After going through cure after treatment, we finally found gastric pacemaking to put pacemakers throughout my stomach to help my system pump stuff through like it should. This was a miracle, and it allowed me to return back to normal life, but I still have continued to battle every day. I have not gone these past 10 years without having a tube in me, without having to take medication, or without having to deal with something very serious. I've had 35 surgeries. I've had kidney failure, liver failure. I can't even begin to go on all the different types of things I've dealt with, but a lot. Over time, the doctors have been warning me that all the medications, the treatments that I've been doing will catch up to me, and they have. My weight has dropped and we can't get it up anymore. My neurological problems are getting much worse and my kidneys are getting worse. It got to a point where the problems that I'm having are becoming so severe that there's no longer anything they can do to treat it, which is why we so abruptly decided to make this decision, because things were happening at an accelerated rate. My doctors explained to me that the more stress my body is under, the quicker it's going to go. So if I could relieve stress from my body and be in comfort, I would get a lot more time and a lot more quality time. My hospice people tell me the people that can live as enjoyable as possible, out of pain, and then just enjoy life are the ones who get the most time, because their body's under the least amount of stress. Which is why I'm not worried, because I know I could go in a couple of weeks, or I could have a few years left. I've been told my whole life that I might not live a long life, so I've been prepared my whole life. At first it was 18, then it was 20, and then it was, keep going. But I kind of finally feel ready to just enjoy, and though I still fight and still fighting, I'm fighting for quality of life. I just want to enjoy, and so for the first time, that's what I'm doing.
2018, finally figure out what's going on. I have a genetic connective tissue disorder called Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. It makes all of my connective tissue too stretchy. And so your body's made up of 80% connective tissue, and mine is just too malleable and stretchy. And so as you can imagine, you know, if my face is that stretchy, think about your organs, think about everything else. And so that opened a door to all of these other diseases I started being diagnosed with, because it affects every system of your body. So I was shortly after that put on nutrition support because I was losing so much weight and was so malnourished because I couldn't eat, because of several different factors of how that was affecting me. And so I haven't had a meal in over 3 years, if you can believe it. It's been that long since I've been able to sit down and have a meal. And even within that, the Lord is so gracious in showing me that He's enough. In moments that I've just been so ravenously hungry, and I've almost starved to death a couple of times, just because of how severely everything was affecting my GI tract and my body not accepting nutrition.
And I will admit, in the past, in the beginning of my journey, I was avoiding. And I was just restricting food, because you think about it, who in the world would not restrict or avoid food if they're violently vomiting when they eat or drink, if they're screaming and crying and excruciating abdominal pain and the most severe nausea where you feel like you can't even move a muscle or breathe without feeling like you're going to vomit? Who wouldn't? Please tell me that. Who wouldn't? So yes, in the past I did. And a doctor diagnosed me with that condition. And I went through a lot. My first hospital admission. I went through a lot. And I decided after that I was going to eat despite everything because I want this diagnosis gone. So despite everything back then, doctors tortured me with an NG. Despite how sick I was, they didn't care, and they tortured me with an NG. 14 feeds into my stomach. And, in the hospital, no one listened to me, nobody cared. They treated me like an eating disorder patient, and once again, eating disorders are bad. Please just, sorry if any of this comes across wrong. I've been so scared to talk about it for this exact reason, and I hate that, but, they wouldn't allow me to see my weight. They always made me stand backwards. They never would tell me my weight, any of it. And doctors came in and treated me different because of it. So I had the most traumatizing hospital admission, and back then, I know some people will relate to this, where you just zone out. You just zone it out, and, you have to survive this. So you're like, okay, I'm good, I'm great, this is a great hospital. People are fabulous and helping me. And then a year later, you realize that was the worst hospital admission of your life. And you have severe PTSD now, and they tortured you. It took a year to undo all of that. And it just came crashing down. And after that, a week after, because they refused to do an NJ because I didn't have SMAS. So they refused to do an NJ. I saw my GI, and she says, you need an NJ? And they wouldn't do it. So a week after, I got an NJ. And I decided that this diagnosis was destroying me and destroying the care I got. Because I knew I didn't have an eating disorder. I had GI conditions. I have proof of it. And so I started eating despite all of it, despite vomiting afterwards and everything. And I thought this doctor removed that diagnosis because it stopped being mentioned as much in our conversations and our appointments, and I assumed it was gone. I assumed that this doctor realized I didn't have it and that I have GI conditions that are causing all of this. And my assuming was wrong. My relationship with this doctor was really bad at first. He was trying to convince my parents to send me to this place miles away in another state. None of your belongings were allowed. It was going to be a 3-month stay. If you want to help your daughter, you're going to send her there. And it was a really dark place. And moving past all of that, when my doctor was trying to convince this doctor to do a port, we had a fight for IV fluids. And so when that fight was finally over and I poured my heart out in a My Chart message, and and this doctor listened, and I got a PICC line, and I started doing fluids, and I was able to function. Relationships started to get better because I thought that diagnosis was gone. So I was like, okay, he's a great doctor. So we went on for months and months and months, and I thought this diagnosis was gone. I was like, okay, this doctor realizes now that I have GI conditions. He believes it now. No. Once my doctor was trying to get this doctor to do a port, and we had that appointment, it came out. That no, that diagnosis is not gone. And mind you, this is the only doctor that thinks it, says it, everything. and I have so many doctors on my team, and so that's saying a lot because every other doctor on my team believes me and knows I have GI conditions and knows I don't have an eating disorder. They know that. He's the only one. And this doctor goes so far first of all, he hides his notes. You can't see his notes, so I have no idea what he writes about me in those notes. But on the little summary thing, it says follow up for eating disorder. Mind you, I was not following up with him for an eating disorder. I was not. So, that appointment, when we were trying to all convince him to say yes to a port because I was going to have surgery the next week, and we were like, okay, like the surgeon just said, like you have to say yes, and then they'll add it on, and then I'll have both surgeries. And somehow we ended up in a rabbit hole because he was not happy that I was getting a port then. So we went down this rabbit hole of all this stuff, saying that eosinophilic esophagitis was like my fault because of diastasis, meaning I wasn't using my GI tract, so somehow I caused myself EOE, and that hit me so hard because I was in EOE symptoms from the very start of all of this, and doctors didn't believe me. So when I got that diagnosis, I felt so much relief, like, hey, I told you something was not right. I've had these symptoms for so long. Then it came out that he still says I have ARFID. I don't remember it all because I zoned most of it out. But he said I still have it. He said, this is what he said. He said, as long as you have GI conditions, you have ARFID. And if you go and research ARFID, that is not, let me repeat that again. That is not what ARFID is. And I have argued with him time and time again. We all have. And he's like, no, as long as you have GI conditions, you have ARFID. And he's like, I understand this is a hard diagnosis for her to understand. No, it's not a hard diagnosis for me to understand. I understand it very clearly. It stands for Avoidant, Restrictive Food Intake Disorder. I'm not avoiding. I'm not restricting. I'm not restricting. I eat what I want when I want, despite the consequences. Despite crying and excruciating abdominal pain, severe nausea where you feel like you can't move, and despite violently vomiting and my tube to flip back into my stomach time and time and time again. So no, I am not avoiding and I'm not restricting, and I do not have ARFID, thank you.